Hi, everybody, and welcome today to the webinar, the U.S. Retail Landscape and the Importance of Diamonds with Provenance, hosted by EcoFriendly. Couple things before we get started. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the Q&A box, and we'll be sure to answer as many questions as we can at the end of the broadcast. Please remember this is a public and a recorded webcast, so please do not share any personal information. And also, we will be sharing a link of the recording to all the participants by email afterwards. So let me go through, and I'd like to introduce the speakers today. First of all, my name is Amy Curtis, and I'm the Director of Sales for EcoFriendly. Also with us today is Kirsten Darrow. She's the Group Vice President of Fred Meyer Jewelers out of Portland, Oregon. And Atit Mehta, who is the Vice President of Atit Diamonds out of New York City. Also joining is Scott Austin. He is our Senior Vice President of Americas with EcoFriendly, and helping us out also is Matt Davidson, who's the Business Development Manager for EcoFriendly. So thank you all for joining today. For those of you that may be new to our organization, EcoFriendly is a technology company that was founded in 2015, which uses the benefit of blockchain in tandem with other cutting technologies to bring greater clarity and confidence to the industry. The founder of our company, Leanne Kemp, is often quoted saying, "Our purpose is to contribute to greater transparency, trust, sustainability, as well as an amazing customer experience in marketplaces where provenance matters most." I was going to start with Kirsten and Atit regarding the environment, the retail environment, but I've attended a couple webinars over the last few weeks, and I keep hearing a similar message. And with that message, I'm hearing a lot of trust your supply chain, authenticity, blockchain, provenance. So during one of these sessions, there was a number of questions that were coming through the chat box of, what is blockchain? Why is it important? How does it work? So I asked Scott to join us today and kick us off to talk about blockchain. So Scott, thank you for joining. And if you could kind of tell us a little bit more about why blockchain is important and how, and really what it works and how it works in the jewelry industry.
Sure, Amy. Thank you for including me, and it's great to be here. Hi, everyone, and Kirsten and Atit, good to share the webinar with you. So if we take a look at blockchain, I think the diamond industry is used to talking blockchain for the last 5 years, and certainly it has formed a part of the fabric of the diamond industry. And one of the first industries in the world to adopt blockchain for non-financial transactions, which has been a revolution for the industry and an example for other industries to follow. I get excited when I talk about blockchain, and I look at it in the context of the internet and the evolution of the internet. And if we think back to when we sent our first email, when we Googled or searched our first URL, we certainly didn't do that until the late 1990s into the early 2000s. At that time, then, we saw a transition from the internet in a relatively uncontrolled, unmanaged environment where we saw business functionality coming online. We saw B2C and B2B functionality coming into play. And certainly that started changing the world as banks started closing down branches and charging higher fees for ATMs. We saw a lot of transition of business into the internet platform. And we have seen that evolve to where it is today. So around about 2007, a person called Satoshi Nakamoto started his first writings on what is called the Bitcoin. And I think we've heard a lot about Bitcoin, its effect on having a decentralized currency, a digital currency that is essentially supported through consensus mechanisms and mining mechanisms. You can see in the next slide how that has changed our interaction from essentially a platform that was unflexible, had financial networks and transactions based with it. Next slide, if you could please, Amy. And essentially we moved then into, okay, how do we operate in a peer-to-peer environment, having transactions between companies, between individuals that essentially occur across the internet, and to where we are today, supported by high cryptography, privacy, and greater transparency. So the future of the internet for me is something that will very much rely upon enhanced trust, enhanced transparency delivered through the blockchain. And let's address a little bit of how we can take something like Bitcoin, which Leanne did over 5 years ago now, and apply it to objects. And what does that look like? Thanks, Amy. Yeah, next slide. So let's look at some fundamental attributes of blockchain technology. We hear a lot about these attributes in day-to-day analysis, but it is distributed. It certainly has some functions to it that are immutable, that once you put something in a structured chain, you can't remove it. It is there. And I remember the day when we woke up with Fred Meyer, the Rock Solid program, and we realized we were on blockchain. We couldn't change stuff, and it was live. And that is an amazing experience because it's a different world. It's a different internet. And from that perspective, we really have to look at what we do to manage that and transition that into future business models, how we cater for the business and the consumer processes around that. So if we look at the next slide, we can see the diamond industry supported by a network of players, a network of actors. The blockchain has the ability to establish independent validation and consensus models across that industry, across that network, having validation of trust points to form consensus around the transactional base, to essentially enable us to build contracts called smart contracts into the back end, so that essentially when something happens in the code, in the highly secure environment, then the contract is sealed and transacted upon. Now, we're not there in the diamond industry yet. We've spent 5 years laying the rails of the industry, working intimately with industry to get to the point now where we're able to expand that model, look at not only simple validation models, but look at how we can utilize the technology for the benefit of players in the industry. And if we look at the next slide, we can see that blockchain in action. We can see that every time there's a transaction, it's called a block for a reason. That transaction is building up blocks. Those blocks sit on all the trust points in the network so that we are able to have mirrored reflections of the history, the provenance of that object, who owned it, who bought it, who sold it. Now, Everledger has ways and means by which we have developed a solution set through our platform that not everyone sees that. We manage the platform. We're able to support permissioning structures around who can see what through the Everledger platform, and certainly enable that business process to conduct itself effectively. And Rock Solid is a prime example of how that can be done. And from that perspective, we're building, in the next slide, greater trust, greater transparency, and greater knowledge, solving some of the problems that the diamond industry was facing in the past, looking at that transparency and trust of that collateral of a diamond. down to the consumer's trust, which is, of course, of optimum importance. So I hope that gives a reasonable explanation. Certainly, if you've got any questions, pop them in the chat room.
Thank you, Scott. And that definitely, I hope helps everybody out there and answer some of the questions that I've heard over the last few weeks. So starting now to talk about a little bit about the retail environment with Kirsten and Atit. It's really interesting. Whoever would have thought, we've been through a really tough part of 2020, and who would have ever thought any of us would live through where we've all been in quarantine, the entire world. Businesses being shut down, retail stores, every business, also being in the middle of the pandemic. And now we have protesting within the US and across the country, other countries. So it's been a little bit of a crazy time. But we're starting to see, businesses, retailers open up, which is very, very exciting. But I'm sure, Kirsten, Atit, a number of these retailers are going to face difficulties. What do you see as some creative, innovative solutions to some of these challenges?
Amy,
go ahead, Atit.
Yeah, no, so, from the wholesale side, I'm saying that, yes, these are very troubling times. This is the first time we are seeing that the whole diamond jewelry industry across the whole value chain is struggling, from the miners to all the way to the retailers. However, in the struggle, we do see some possibilities of innovation that we think can help us in the future. Just to name some that we've been working on, just how to manage inventory levels better, how to be more in tune with the retailer to see what exact rough purchasing we need to do to make sure that we don't hold extra inventory and are able to be efficient with with the product that we're delivering to our retailers. Yeah, go ahead, Kirsten, sorry.
Sure. Fred Meyer Jewelers has been fortunate because we have a unique format that we operate in. And so that unique format actually is an innovative solution. Because we operate primarily inside of big box stores, those big box stores also sell groceries. And so I think as people remain cautious about physical distancing and limiting their trips, we're positioned to provide convenience to customers when they're looking for gifts and self-purchases. And I believe that convenience will be more important than ever in the near future, and it's convenience and safety that will really drive the innovative solutions.
So how has, Kirsten, how has the customer experience changed in store within the jewelry area?
Well, certainly it's about being relevant. And so I think that it's important not to be tone deaf to everything that's going on today. Given the environment and the industry, that it's really important to connect emotionally with customers. And certainly the in-store experience is a lot different as far as, there's a lot of closeness when you're selling jewelry and a lot of emotional connection, people that are celebrating special occasions and our salespeople want to celebrate with them, and that might be a hug. Those days are kind of gone for now. So it's important to be able to have the safety measures in place, but still be able to connect really on an emotional level with the customer. So it definitely is a challenge.
Fred Meyer does something a little bit different than some of the other retailers out there and I love this, that you guys have the traveling sales team and they do trunk shows across the country in all of your different stores. So if you can tell us a little bit more about that team, but this is actually one way that you guys can have more of that maybe personal one-on-one connection that is so important to the customer as well as the sales associate, even though they may be talking with a mask on, it's still a little closer than maybe the in-store experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to talk about that. We do hundreds of trunk shows each year. It's a really important part and a special part of our business. When we first launched our Rock Solid collection, it was really initially just with these teams, these trunk show teams. This is important because these teams are truly our best-in-class diamond professionals and selling superstars. So as you mentioned, Amy, the nature of these trunk shows is really geared to that personal one-on-one experience. And customers come into these shows and they're expecting something beyond just the norm. They don't want just regular shopping experience. They want something special. And so Rock Solid really is that perfect, special, and unique offering at these trunk shows. And the other benefit was by providing it through the teams, it provided the opportunity for us to introduce Rock Solid to all of our stores and all of our associates, which was really a great training opportunity in advance of us rolling it out to all of our stores in case.
Have you seen the online experience change at all?
Well, yes, we sure have. We've seen tremendous growth online, which isn't surprising. But what we have found surprising is that the growth we've seen is actually coming from new customers versus existing brick and mortar customers whose local store may have been closed. So that's kind of a little bit where we thought we would see, kind of the brick and mortar customer transition over to the online. But we're seeing a lot of new customers online, which is wonderful.
That's awesome because, it's been a little bit slower sometimes with selling fine jewelry online.
Sure.
That's exciting. So we've definitely seen changes out there. And I believe we're maybe see some changes with consumer spending as we still have a pretty high unemployment rate in the United States. So do you think luxury people will be out spending on luxury goods? Or do you think we're going to have a slower comeback? And Atit, do you want to address this first? I mean,
Sure.
people have been in quarantine, so maybe
I agree with you.
they're all getting married.
So I think we as a company, we're very hopeful for a speedy recovery, especially in the bridal engagement markets. Two main factors we see as having a big impact. One is the trillions of dollars that were injected into the American economy. This will definitely find its way back to the American consumer. It just depends on when and how it does. I know through the pandemic, American savings rates have hit historical levels. I know in April I read something, it was about 33%. However, we feel that these should trickle down into spending fairly soon. We can already see glimpses of this happening in China. I mean, we're seeing reports that luxury spending has increased, especially in the short term right after once the lockdown and the whole pandemic started easing up in China. However, the main hurdle I see with our industry is to be able to capture a chunk of this spending. Traditionally, we have not been able to grow demand. I hope this time we are able to resonate well with consumers and increase demand. We definitely need a lot of advertising budgets. Ad campaigns need to be made. I know there's one out there which a lot of the major diamond miners are doing under only natural diamond. I think hopefully that adds to the whole thing. But main thing is we need to be able to increase, be able to capture the whole chunk of money that the government's kind of use as stimulus into the economy.
Yeah, absolutely. Kirsten, what are your thoughts?
Sure. From the retailer perspective, we've been pleasantly surprised actually with consumer spending, recently, despite the slow emergence from the pandemic and the unemployment rate. Of course, it's impossible to know if that current trend will continue and what holiday will look like this year. However, I do believe that we will be competing with experiential spending, coming out of this pandemic. But I also think that after a crisis, tradition becomes really important. And of course, that's best celebrated with diamond jewelry. So I'm very hopeful.
Exactly. So actually, this next question is for Atit. Atit, we've talked a little bit about the B2C selling. How do you see the B2B selling changing as a lot of the domestic and the international shows have been canceled this year? And we've seen the shows be a little bit different over the past few years anyway. But how are you connecting and staying connected or doing presentations with the retail buyers? And how are you even projecting demand for the back half of this year or into the early part of 2021, I guess?
No, for sure. to your point, I think shows have been dwindling in importance the last few years. A lot of the business was done outside the shows, either leading up to the show or right after the show. The shows had become more of a social gathering. However, be that we haven't been able to go see customers, we haven't been able to really be in front of them. So we still use our traditional channels of email, cell phones. However, we have just started doing some Zoom calls with them. Truthfully, the main hurdle here is to be able to engage a buyer for a long period of time on a video conference. It's very hard to hold their attention, but I think it's just practice to figure out how to navigate and keep it so that it's very clear and we're not veering off topic too much. But yeah, I mean, it's something that we're using. It's something that we're gonna have to use because most retailers right now are saying that they probably won't be having vendors come in for the rest of the year. So I mean, it's something that I think it's a necessity. Regarding how to project demand, I think we're taking month by month or even week by week right now. We're just trying to see whatever sell-throughs are coming, whatever replenishment we can do for those sell-throughs. We're seeing online channels are still pretty strong mediums for sales. So that's still trickling in. So we're able to build up some inventory there where if brick and mortars need faster replenishment, we're able to give it right away. So yeah, we're building inventory cautiously, hoping that we do see a good good Q4 this year.
Well, and India is opening up too, I think, with limitations in capacity. So that kind of brings me back to one of the next questions to talk a little bit more actually about technology. And so, Atit, how do you see the diamond pipeline changing at all? And how will blockchain technology impact or support or influence the jewelry industry?
Yeah. So I think diamond manufacturing will continue to evolve. I think more and more of the manufacturing will be tailored for orders. The old way of manufacturing, holding diamonds till there is some demand, it's an obsolete business. Manufacturers will be forced to plan and purchase rough according to their existing orders. And I think this whole leads into lower inventory. But I think integrating technology to forecast this demand and manage inventory is going to be definitely a way of the future. Also, this allows them to kind of be more in sync with the retailers and how they're planning it, what they're planning, what kind of programs are going to be more hand to hand with the retailer. I think are the programs that are going to work. I think also more than ever, manufacturers will have to embrace blockchain technology to provide the end consumer authenticity and origin of their product. I'm a big believer that today's customer wants to know where the product is coming from and how it was made. The diamond industry might be the only industry where this has been so unclear for years. People have been asking and they just haven't been able to get products that have full transparency of where they've come and how they were made. Especially with the rise of lab-grown diamonds, authenticity will be something consumers want more and more. They want to make sure that what they're buying is natural, and blockchain will allow for the retailer to authenticate this with a lot more certainty than in the past.
Absolutely. Kirsten, again, Fred Meyer, a leader in the industry to offer diamonds with full provenance by designing the brand Rock Solid. And it was the first one to offer full provenance on the using blockchain technology. So a couple of questions. Was the consumer asking for this? I mean, we have the millennials that are all in an age group that can be getting married, and then we've got the Gen Zs that actually, I think that goes from 5 to 25. So they're all starting to enter the engagement marriage also. And we know how important provenance is for them as well. So were they asking for this? And then probably the second part of that question would be, how are the sales associates in the store? What are they saying about the experience of selling a stone with Provenance and walking through the whole details of from its origin all the way to certification? And is that engagement with the customer, and how is that?
Well, as you said, we introduced Rock Solid. It was actually in 2018, and we're so excited and proud. Rock Solid Diamonds is our exclusive brand, and Scott did a phenomenal job explaining sort of the technical side of blockchain. But we like to say that it tracks a diamond's journey from the moment of discovery right up until our customer's special day. And in our Rock Solid collection, we offer a carefully curated assortment of bridal rings, solitaire rings, as well as loose diamonds. We didn't necessarily have customers asking specifically for diamonds with provenance, but we really have a strong demand with our customer base for certified diamonds. So we decided to take it up another level of reassurance, which customers of all age groups, so the millennials and the Gen X as well as everyone else, have really positively responded to this offering. Often we find that customers don't necessarily have the full understanding of blockchain technology, or even maybe that it even matters to them. But once we bring them along, it suddenly clicks for them and it does become important. It's beyond the certification of authenticity and characteristics, and it's really not about the actual blockchain technology itself, but more of what that technology provides, which actually, believe it or not, is part of the romance. Customers love knowing the story of how their one-of-a-kind diamond came to be. And so when presented in the right way, blockchain can be a really powerful and emotionally connecting sales tool for our associates. Another aspect of it is our manufacturer is clearly on the leading edge of environmental and social responsibility. And so that's another great tool in addition to the provenance that can be powerful selling. So.
Absolutely. And that's actually one of my next questions for Atit, and probably the last question. And then I wanted to actually demo the Rock Solid experience so everybody can see how that actually works in store and how the sales associate would sell to a customer. So Atit, just to finish up with you, to address the environment, now more than ever, the environment means more to, with an asset is being produced, the customer wants to know more about it. And Atit and Shairu Diamonds in India have been pioneers in this industry with addressing your factories. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I think more than ever, it's very important right now, just with whatever the whole world's gone through with COVID-19. So we have been we have been pioneers in the environmental front. We feel that it's been our duty to give back to the community that we work in. Shairu Gems is the first factory in the diamond manufacturing space to be certified by the LEED rating system, where it received a platinum certificate. Some of the initiatives we have undertaken are installing solar panels and windmills to offset our energy consumption, the goal being to become carbon neutral. We have also installed rainwater harvesting ducts as well as sewage treatment plants to be able to recycle and reuse water. We are constantly adopting new ideas and have encouraged our employees to do so as well. These are just some of the few things we've done. There's a whole checklist of items that we needed, not needed, we did because we believed in it as a company. And we do think this is a very unique proposition, especially right now, for us to be able to offer, diamonds that are eco-friendly.
I think that's great. You guys should be extremely proud of what you're doing. So I'm going to move forward, and thank you guys. I'm going to move forward and actually look at Rock Solid and moving over to the website. So this is the Rock Solid website that Everledger worked in tandem with Fred Meyer as well as Atit to design. And I'm not going to go through every tab on this, but I'm going to highlight some of the most important. One being the homepage. The homepage talks a little bit more about the concept and how and why the brand was designed, and standing for the protection of human rights, environmental sustainability, and that the society's benefiting from the economic activities around them. If you scroll down from the page, the Rock Solid Diamond Journey, we'll talk a little bit more about all the different stages, starting with the origin and the rough, all the way to the certification stage. And then if you scroll down some more, you can actually move through here and it'll tell you about Provenance and a little bit more. The About page talks a little bit more about Fred Meyer and their company values, and about that they're friendly. And it also talks to the fact where Atit just mentioned that their stones are cut and polished in the world's first gold LEED certified diamond factory. A little bit more about their company values and human rights and transparency and trust. And then the history. Contact page is exactly what that is. If somebody wanted to learn more about Rock Solid Diamonds, it gives them all the information to contact someone at Fred Meyer. The Our Diamond page is actually where the sales associate would log into, and they have a login and password that they need to enter to log in. Now I'm going to jump over here to this login page because this is a live site. Okay, so entering this page, this is live inventory for the Rock Solid site. So the customer or the sales associate may filter if they're looking for a stone by certain characteristics, or they may also filter by just putting in the certification number. So I'm actually just going to jump down to, let's see, close that up. We're going to look at this stone right here. And so they can actually just click on a stone too. So to view this asset, and it brings up the entire provenance of this stone. So if we start to scroll down, it looks at the provenance of starting with the carat weight, the origin. It's a quick snapshot actually up here. The diamond. You can see that it may be shared on social media, which I'll talk to in a minute. And then the 4 C's, and it also says that this is a conflict-free and that the origin and it's using blockchain technology as well. If you go down more, it goes through each of the different stages, and starting with the discovery stage, which talks to the composition and the mining of the stone. The origin, which we already said was a Botswana sort, so this talks to it again and states that. The assessing stage looks at the rough and the DNA of that rough, and this is the actual rough, and it tells you where the carat weight started. And then moving through to the planning or the mapping stage. And this stage is planning out the diamond to get the most yield out of it and the least amount of inclusions. Straight down to a laser cutting stage, which you can see the weight start to change, the polishing of that stone, and then the quality, which is the certification. You can see the finished carat weight and the grading certificate, as well as the diamond certificate, a PDF of that. So this is actually when this stone is purchased, and I'm going to flip back. When this stone is purchased, so the customer and the sales associate can walk through all of this and look at various different loose stones, or as Kirsten said, there are also stones that are set rings within this program. But they can also take this, the consumer wants to purchase this, all they do is during the sale, they hit the transfer button, put in the customer's email address, or click accept and then next, and then that diamond will be transferred. So that is how it works on Rock Solid. So I think that wraps it up. We can go ahead and answer some questions if we have any out there, which Matt was going to help me with that. Matt, can you see what kind of question and answer?
Yep. So we got a couple in the Q&A, and then we got a couple in email before this webinar. So I'll just start with the ones we got here. So the first one how can a physical item like diamonds be attached securely to something that is online, even with how robust the blockchain technology is?
Scott, do you want to take that one?
Sure. Thanks for the question. Look, it's a great question because I think ultimately the diamond itself is something that's very difficult to tag. So, Everledge has been building out the industry for 5 years. We've established some really strong algorithms that support some of the identity structures that we have, particularly in an online environment. So, by nowhere no means is that complete yet. That's an ongoing structure that we have working with industry. But we do use a symphony of technologies on top of the blockchain layer to support our identification throughout the process. That also brings into play strong chain of custody, transparency and tracking. That also brings into play a lot of validation techniques. In fact, a lot of the validation that comes through the blockchain really forms a critical part of that whole authentication process, even in an online environment. And that's where we've refined some elements of our solution set to be able to do matches against some of the strong certificate houses like GIA, really validate some of the gemological characteristics of the diamond, work closely with those certificate houses and the industry as well to support track and trace technologies. Now, I'm sure one day there'll be an opportunity for you to present your smartphone to a diamond and authenticate it through that visual reality. But at the moment, we use a symphony of technologies. We use them in harmony to identify and almost become predictive about where that diamond is and where it's going to be sold. So certainly, by no means are we finished. It's an ongoing process. And we're excited by some of the new product features that we're about to launch to support that authenticity and validation of authenticity.
Matt, do you have another question?
Thanks, Scott. Yep, next question is about the Rock Solid program. So within the Rock Solid website, is there some kind of catalog where I can see the history of a diamond and its characteristics as it's powered by blockchain?
Currently, we do not have a catalog with all of the diamonds on the Rock Solid site that is searchable. And so it's really right now designed to be a tool to look up an individual diamond. And you do get to see, as Amy showed us a little bit of the history and the characteristics of that diamond. Each, obviously in this scenario, every single diamond is unique and has its own blockchain and story and provenance. And so, it's really about a one-to-one versus having this large catalog. We're also right now only selling it in our brick and mortar stores. We are going to put it online and offer it on our e-commerce website later this year. And so that will provide an ability, once it's on our website, to be able to actually search, because on the Rock Solid Diamonds website itself, that's not necessarily a transactional website where you can purchase. It's more to look up the diamond, versus our website where we'll be actually able to purchase the Rock Solid diamond directly on our website.
Great, thank you, Kirsten.
Thanks. And then the last one that came in Q&A, once purchased, do customers get updates at each stage in real time?
I guess there wouldn't really be any updates once it's purchased, because all the provenance data is before the stone's purchased.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think you're pretty much done once you purchase the stone, and then it's actually in your private jewelry box at that point. So that is where you actually would have the the capacity to go out and share that on social media, a hashtag I got engaged, and share that within the Twitter, or the that you can share that story with your friends and family. So
yeah,
okay.
but it's a great question, because it really deals with the issue of transfer of ownership, and how does transfer of ownership support that traceability function that came up in the question before. And when you've been in this business long enough, I think there's some of the fine-tuning elements that we've got. So essentially it sits in a consumer vault, and it's the jewelry box that is individualized that enables that consumer to then reflect on the provenance story, view back to it, and subsequently, if it's bought for other reasons and they want to sell it at a later stage, they're able to do that through the vault characteristics. So they can transfer that ownership then on to new owners. So this is, the consumer element and the experience is something that Fred Meyer and Atid really pushed hard to establish a really good consumer experience at their personal jewelry box level.
Great, thank you, Scott. All right, I think that's it. I want to thank everybody for joining today, and Kirsten, Atit, Scott, and Matt, all for your help. We'll be sharing a recording of this, as I said earlier, by email in the next few days. If this conversation has sparked your interest about blockchain, about diamonds, please feel free. I'm putting up on the screen right now some contact information for myself and Atit and Kirsten, that you please reach out to us, visit our websites, feel free to call. And please feel free to follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn. And that's all I have for today. But I'm going to thank you all for joining, and have a
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.